if I don't believe in the medicine that I'm putting into my body, whether it's their medicine or my medicine, then that medicine really isn't going to work very well for me. And I believe that with all my heart.
Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing personal stories of transformation from people whose lives have been touched by cancer. My name is Cheryl Buck, and I will be guiding today's conversation. My guest, Pauline Koinis, is a medical intuitive who incorporates many different healing modalities into her work. Her forthcoming book, Cancer is Personal, tells the story of her cancer journey and how she forged her own path to wellness. Hi, Pauline.
Hi, Cheryl.
How are you?
I'm having a good day today. How are you?
A good day because you're on Cancer Talks podcast. That's one reason, right?
That is. And I haven't talked to you in a while, which is always such a pleasure. So I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. I'm so happy that you're here. And I thought we'd start this conversation with maybe your early life and some things that you love to do, or a thing you love to do. Basically, your life before you got a cancer diagnosis. You want to start there?
Sure.
Okay.
That's a great place to start. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think what feels good to me is just starting with my passions, what I love to do. I've always loved the body. It's always fascinated me, which I can tell you a little bit more about in a minute. But and nature, taking long walks in nature. I'm an ocean girl, even though I lived in the East Coast for almost 40 years. I just moved to California, and just loving these long, lazy walks on the beach barefoot, and going up to the Redwood Mountains and seeing these amazing trees. And I'm a biker. I've been riding motorcycles for about 30 years. So
Wow.
My kids call me the motorcycle mama. So that's always been my freedom. It's just being on my bike in nature with the wind has just always made me feel like one with everything. But in my early life, my mom died when she was 38 years old, and I was 12. And I think from that moment on, I really think I was instilled with like this knowledge that I wanted to help others because I couldn't help her, which I think it's very common with empaths and intuitives, which is what I do. But when she passed, it was such a pivotal age. I was going through puberty, and I think I kind of went down a destructive road for a while due to her death. But one thing that did for me was it really made me a survivor. And I learned the hard way, I think, that being a survivor can be a really good thing for a short time, but in the long run, it can also bring you down. And that's kind of what happened to me in about, I think it was 1992. I was married. I had 3 small children under the age of 2.5. I had just had twins, and my husband left me. And, being that survivor that I was, I figured I could just do it all and take on the world and not ask for any help. And that was hard for me. And so I worked like 3 or 4 jobs, and I did this for about 7 years. And I started getting these really weird symptoms. I started getting sick of, like heart palpitations and eye twitches and just really odd things that, you don't normally have. And, instead of listening to my body, I just kept pushing until one day I pushed myself into the emergency room one more time and literally just fell down on my knees. And I was diagnosed with severe adrenal failure. And I was 36 years old. And, it's Addison's disease. And Addison's is where your adrenal glands sort of regulate your stress. So it regulates your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system. And when your adrenals are on really high alert, right, in sympathetic mode, then it can withstand that for a short period of time. Like if you have to brake your car really fast, or, even for a year or two, you can stay in that mode. But what happens when you stay in it for long periods of time is that all of your other organs will then start to donate their life force, their chi, if you will, to the adrenal glands. And in return, they will start shutting down. And so one by one, all of your other organs will shut down and you will die. And it's from stress. So really, basically, stress kills.
Yes.
And this doctor who, he was like the last person I thought would, say any of this to me. He was, at that point when I met him in the ER, he had a ponytail and tattoos, and, he was just like your unconventional doctor. And he sat me down and he said, if you don't change your lifestyle today, you won't see your children live. I'll give you 6 months. Wow. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm 36 years old. So that was the beginning of me really delving into the body.
So you were dealing with it for 14 years?
Pretty much.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm one of the lucky ones. It's most people, and it's not the first time, but it's, I really feel that it was the turning point, even though I got my personal trainer's license in 1980. So, that was before it was even heard of. I would say, oh, yeah, I'm a personal trainer. And people go, huh? What's that? And then, when this happened to me, it happened serendipitously that I got a little postcard in the mail the day I went home from the hospital. And it was for the Connecticut Center of Massage Therapy. And I called him up, and it just so happened to be a practitioner's program so it was for people who were already in the medical system in some way, nurses. And I went down and I convinced her that my personal trainer's license was enough for me to join the group. And so it was a group that was doing a 2-year course in 10 months. And
just like anybody with adrenal fatigue would want to do.
Right. But you know what? I think it was the impetus of my healing, the adrenal fatigue. And I think it was because for the first time, instead of working jobs that, I was just making enough money to just pay the bills and make ends meet, I was doing something that all of a sudden I realized that I was so passionate about that it just made my heart sing to go to class 3 days a week. And I was getting, the energy from the class, the people in the class, and we were going through such big transformations, all of us in the class, that I think that, again, that energy just helped to keep me up in my own life where I was, I wasn't run down. I mean, there were days that, of course, I was tired. I mean, 3 kids and part-time job and then going to school full-time was difficult. But
yes,
I really believe, again, that the passion, knowing that, oh my gosh, I was just fascinated by what I was learning.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Wow.
Yeah, so that's what happened, and how I got sort of into the modalities. I started out again as a personal trainer, and then became a licensed massage therapist. And from there, I'm still in school. I'm in a two certification programs right now, but I think I have. I studied in India for Ayurveda. That was a 4-year training. I'm in a shamanic training now that will probably last the rest of my life, and astrology and yoga, therapeutic yoga instructor for 18 years, and master herbalist, and I guess about 15 or so different certifications.
Okay, I'm going to say it again. Wow. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Now, how many years later did you get your cancer diagnosis? Was it during this time or that you're talking about?
No, that was in, So I guess that was in the early 90s. And my cancer diagnosis came in January of 2019.
Oh, very recently.
Yeah.
Will you tell me a little bit about your experience when you got the diagnosis?
Let's see. Well, I knew something was wrong actually a while before I was officially diagnosed, because I want to say it was around October of 2018. And I was on a shamanic retreat with, it's called the Power Path group. And we were on retreat. And when you're on retreat in this group, each participant gets a healing from one of the directors. And when I went up to get my healing, I was asked, what I wanted to have healed. And I immediately said my ovaries. And she said, well, why? Is something wrong? Have you gone to the doctor? And I said, no, I just know there's something wrong. And I'm a medical intuitive, so I'm able to decipher things for people, and that doesn't exclude myself. So the symptoms were, I was bloating. My hand was constantly going over my ovaries, and that was the main thing for me. It was like, why are my hands like, it's like I was protecting a pregnant womb or something. It was like my hands were constantly there. And so when I got home, I had made an appointment with my GP, but of course, the PCPs now, they don't do regular PAP exams. So you have to get a specialist to do these. So, I couldn't get in to see a specialist until January. And instead of me really paying attention and listening, I kind of went, well, it's the holidays, I got to get my family together for New Year, for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so I just said, I'll be fine. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the times in my life where I wished I had just said, no, you need to pay attention to this. And I didn't. And so January 18th, I went into the gynecologist. And again, I was just so fortunate, because I'm finding that, later, after doing a lot of research, that this is normally not the case. But when I went in, she immediately did a sonogram, and she called the next day and said, you need to go see an oncologist. And that's when I knew that something was seriously wrong. And so I went in, I made an appointment with the doctor that she recommended. And I was in Connecticut at the time. And so it was January 25th. And we didn't know yet what was exactly wrong, but we did know that there was something growing in me, and it was quite big. And later on, we found out much more. But so that was January 25th. And he basically said, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a laparoscopic hysterectomy with this 2 small holes and see if we can take it out that way. Best case scenario is you're going to have a hysterectomy. And worst case scenario is we're going to take out whatever we can. And while you're under anesthesia, we're going to biopsy it. And if it's malignant, then we're going to redirect and open you up and take as much as we can out. So, even sitting there, all I kept hearing was, best case scenario, hysterectomy. And that's basically what just kept rolling in my mind is, okay, I can live without my ovaries, and, no problem. Mm-hmm. But, I think what happens is when you're sitting there and you hear these words coming at you, you basically shut down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And
shut down or just completely panic.
Yeah. And I really feel for the people today who can't have someone with them, because if it wasn't for my partner being with me and being very, very diligent and listening to everything, I wouldn't have remembered a thing.
Yes.
It's just really, again, it's that survival mode. You just, you put your blinders on and you go, I can do this, I can handle this. But in reality, it really changes the whole way you think about things.
That's right. In that moment.
In that moment. Yeah. In that moment. And so really, like I said, I didn't know what I officially had until I woke up after surgery. I think his surgery was 7 or 8 hours. And I was minus 8 organs.
What? Okay. Could you repeat that, please?
Right. I went in for a hysterectomy, which, okay, so your hysterectomy is 5 organs. You have 2 ovaries, 2 fallopian tubes, and a uterus. So that's 5 organs.
Okay.
And then they also took my spleen, my cervix, and something called your omentum, which is the fatty sheath that basically holds all of your organs together into your abdomen.
Right.
And I had already had my appendix out. So here I am now without 9 organs, and I'm doing, I feel great. I don't know how that works, but
I think you're doing fantastic.
I think that's what gets people the most is when I say, yeah, I don't, they took 8 organs. And they're like, what?
Oh my gosh. So, all right. Well, then, so you had the hysterectomy and then the spleenectomy and then one other that you said.
The oophorectomy. That is called
otomectomy.
Otomectomy. Oophorectomy. Well, all those ectomies.
Yeah, they were all ectomized or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, then you went home and you recovered probably. And what was going on? Like, what were you thinking? What was happening in your mind? And as you finished up that surgery and then moved on to heal, what happened?
Well, what happened was I didn't really follow protocol is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been quite interesting and rewarding in some ways, but extremely difficult in others when we step out of protocol. And so what happened was during this time of, my oncologist, gynecological oncologist, who was also my surgeon, he basically told myself and my family that after surgery that, they wanted to do chemotherapy, which was carboplatin and tamoxifen. And I basically said no. And then they wanted to know why. And I said, well, because I was in Addison's disease 10, 12 years ago, and I got through that naturally. And my immune system, I don't believe is great. I think it's still compromised. And I'm very careful about what I put in my body. And, we were pretty much told that if I did not do chemotherapy after surgery, that I would die in 3 months. That's what I was told.
Wow.
And with that knowledge of the prognosis, I just didn't believe it, because I had come through something so severe before in my life. It wasn't stage 4 cancer, but Addison's disease is extremely severe disease. And every intuitive sense in my body said, please don't put that in me. You won't do well.
Mm-hmm. What did your family think?
Oh, well, they know Mom. I mean, she's motorcycle mama. She's a rebel. So they were like, well, of course she's not going to do chemo now. No, they actually, we had long discussions. My son, 2 out of 3 of my children, who are all adult children, by the way, really wanted me to do chemo. And my other daughter, she was like, Mom, I know who you are. I get it. You have to do what you feel right is for you. And then after I sat with my kids and told them, look, if I don't believe in the medicine that I'm putting into my body, whether it's their medicine or my medicine, then that medicine really isn't going to work very well for me. Mm-hmm. And I believe that with all my heart. So, they said, okay, we've got your back, Mom. We love you, whatever you decide. And, as long as you think you know what you're doing and this is your body, you can put whatever you want into it. We're behind you. Mm-hmm. But they were difficult conversations.
I can only imagine. Actually, no, I've had them. So I don't need to imagine.
Yeah, it happened, right?
Yeah.
It happened. And I think it does happen more than we talk about.
Yes.
And, the conversations around this, and this is why I'm writing a book, is because, what happened is the conversations around this. There wasn't very many conversations saying, Pauline, what do you believe? I mean, I don't think one person asked me on my whole team of doctors, who I was, what I did for a living, what my belief systems were, what my soul or my heart was going through. I just felt like a number.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Okay. And if I said no, there was like a lot of like, what do you mean no? We know what's best for you. And I have to say that yes, they have a lot of training and they go through a tremendous amount of schooling, but no one on the planet knows your body better than you do, or I do, knows my body better than I do. If you listen to it. And I've been, I'm a somatic practitioner. This is what I teach people. I teach them about their bodies and how to listen to their bodies so that, if I had listened to my own body, I probably, I may not have been a stage 3, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and really it's a very, very, very personal decision. For me not doing chemo, I would never ask anyone not to do anything, but my already compromised immune system was the fact that I knew I had to do something different. And so I did all my testing up front. I did molecular profiling or biomarker testing, and that offers like a blueprint of what's going on in your tumor.
Is this what you write about in the book that you are almost finished with?
Yes.
Is that ready to be published?
Yes.
And the title of your book is?
Cancer is Personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you talk about precision medicine in the book. That's what you're talking about now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's a memoir, sort of, self-help book. It's a memoir of, how I came to all of the decisions I did when I was diagnosed with these 2 life-threatening diseases. And then it's how I learned how to move forward in integrating Eastern and Western medicine. Because honestly, the surgery saved my life. And that's allopathic. Right? They cut me open. That's Western medicine. So I think that it's important for people to know that, even though I chose not to do the chemotherapy, I did choose to do allopathic medicine. But I integrated both of them so that I had the very best chance of healing in the most natural way that I thought my body could handle.
Right.
And, a lot of this precision medicine helped with that because, instead of just throwing the kitchen sink at me with this chemo and this radiation or whatever they wanted to do, I took the time to say, wait a minute, why don't we just figure out what all my cells in my body will do? And the thing is, Cheryl, if it's like, say you had the exact same epithelial serous carcinoma that I did, stage 4, the whole thing, you could do all of this testing and your treatment is going to be different than mine.
That's fascinating.
Right. And don't you think that's, I just feel that's much more acceptable and personal to how to heal the body than just going, no, we're gonna organ label you, you've got ovarian cancer, you've got breast cancer, you've got, cervical cancer. No. Instead, if we go, oh, well, let's do some biomarker testing and say, oh, even though you have cervical cancer, we've got these, mutated genes over here that are doing really with breast cancer that are doing really well with this particular medicine. I bet that would work for your cervical cancer. So now we're cross-labeling and we're saying, oh, wait a minute, we don't have to put you in, into a lump of organ diagnosis, right? And that's the fascinating thing for me.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I've done.
Yes. If I didn't hear that whole story, I would think you'd never been sick, because you just are vivacious and full of life and interested in so many things, and it takes energy to do all of that. So given that, can you talk a little bit about at what point did you maybe see the world in a different way? have an experience of growth or that something had shifted? And maybe it isn't one thing.
Yeah, transformation. I think it's happening all the time.
Okay.
But I
Good
mean,
answer.
yeah, in so many different ways. But there were I think a couple of things that happened that I can think of that really was kind of like a wow, like an aha moment for me. And one was when I was going into pre-op, and Leighton, my partner, came up to me and he handed me a card, and it had the number on it for my surgery. And the number was 1111. And this is the address of the house where my mother died.
Mm.
And I just got chills.
Yeah.
And I just knew in my heart, that she was there with me. I just knew no matter what, whether I lived or died that day on the operating table, that I was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this calm, Cheryl, it was like I've never felt this calm in my life. And the nurses were even saying, "Are you okay? Like you are, you're so calm." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I think at that moment, again, it was like this aha. I was like, "Look, if I make it out of this, then I'm going to do whatever I can to heal, like I did with the Addisons, and bridge this gap between just using Eastern medicine or just using Western medicine." And that it really struck me at that moment that the integration of all medicines, no matter what they are, should be looked at. And so that was one. And I think the next one, this one really hit me hard. It had to do with my doctor, that the one who basically said, if you don't do the chemotherapy, you're going to die in about 3 months. And he said more than that, which was very hard for my family to hear. And so when I started going in to see him in the very beginning, I said to him, I believe that 80% of this cancer isn't mine. And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. And he goes, what do you mean by that? And I said, I'm a somatic practitioner. I work with people's energies and their bodies. And I said, I think I took most of this cancer on from my clients because somehow my business had morphed into cancer patients basically in the last 5 years. It was like 75% cancer patients. And I really believe that through transference, I had taken on some cancer, a lot of their cancer. And so, he kind of poo-pooed me and, rolled his eyes. And then about 8 months later, I came in, and of course, I'd seen him in intervals of like 2 months each. And, within 4 months, my 14-inch scar was completely healed inside and out. My hair grew all the way down to my butt, flowing, and my skin looks great. I feel great. And he finally looked at me and said, "Remember when you said that to me?" And I said, "Of course I do." And he goes, "I believe you now."
Wow.
He said, if there's any, I don't want to take my patient's cancer on. Can you help me with any advice? And at that moment, Cheryl, I just looked at him with tears rolling down my face, and I opened my arms and I said, "Can I have a hug?" And he came and gave me a hug. And I said, "I love you, Doc." And he said, "I love you too." And
Aww.
I don't think that happens in our world. And for someone who, he's a brilliant surgeon and a pretty cool guy, but we were on different ends of the spectrum on our belief systems when we met.
Yes.
And that was extremely transformational for me, and I hope for him too.
It sounds like it was from his response. Yeah, that's beautiful. Really.
Yeah. And I really think for me, it's like surrendering. It just, I don't know if you know the poem Rumi, and, the guest in his house, but it's like when someone knocks on the door, which in this case would be cancer, in our shamanic world, we say, "Look, let him in. It's an ally. You can't stop it. right? You can't just say, oh, I don't have cancer and walk away from it. No, you've got to let it in and as an ally and embrace it and try to understand why it chose you and also why it chose that particular organ in you to host the cancer. And I find this part of the healing extremely powerful. So, the more that we dive down the path, because cancer doesn't just show up. Cancer has started to happen, 7 to 10 years before you're diagnosed.
Yeah.
And sometimes even longer than that. So I think that, again, the Eastern part of the healing is looking at the body, not just the body as a separate entity, but at the body, mind, and soul as one. And when we hold our emotions in our body in any place, as my teacher, Carolyn Myss would say, it's cause for concern. Right? You have to really look at that and understand that your emotions are going to cause stress. And again, the longer you hold that stress anywhere in your body, you're going to cause dis-ease. So
do you talk about this in Cancer is Personal?
I do.
Yeah. Fantastic. I just want to thank you really from the bottom of my heart for, again, agreeing to share your story. Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing or any last words of wisdom or?
Wow. Well, first of all, just thanks for having me. I just love our talks, just our talks.
Yeah, right. Me too.
But I think, what I would say is if you're newly diagnosed and you've got this wrecking ball coming into your living room, know that there are solutions and know you're going to be okay before you dive down that, oh my God road. Take a step back and take a deep breath and just tell yourself you're going to be okay. I think the wisest advice that I could give myself or to anyone else. But and if you want to know more about what I do, you could look me up on my website, which is just my name, Pauline Koinis, KOINIS.com. And I'll have the excerpt of the book up on the website shortly and have the book out hopefully by mid-spring, we're hoping.
Fantastic. Yes, I was honored to read the introduction and the first chapter. And I think what I wrote back to you is that when people read your book, and I've only read 2 parts of it, and they get a cancer diagnosis, they will devour it. So I just want to thank you in advance for that contribution that you're making to people and your advice really to be positive given a cancer diagnosis is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. With you there.
Thank you too,
Appreciate
Cheryl. And big hug. Talk soon.
Yeah, same here. Okay. Thanks, Pauline.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you are moved to support this podcast financially, please visit patreon.com/cancertalks. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. This podcast was produced by Claire DeLaslo and Annie Mernigan. Annie also provided original music for the episode. As always, we want to extend special thanks to our donors, friends, and volunteers. We couldn't do this without you.